Looking to fine-tune your silk 3D prints? Well, today I've got some additional tips, tricks, and settings that'll leave your silk prints looking flawless. We've got all that, and we've got Goblin. It's in today's video, so come check it out. What's up, everyone? Back at it again. It is DW Darkwing Dad. I hope you guys are having a very happy new year. I hope you had a happy new year. But with today, we are continuing on from Silk Printing 101. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of share with you my profile settings for silk printing. I'm going to rehash some of the things that I talked about and talk about a few more settings that I didn't talk about in the first video and kind of explain what they are and just show what all these settings do and the end result, which is my green goblin mask. So this was a fully silk printed helmet, literally just settings and a nice controlled print, and the printer did all the work, and I think it came out pretty good. We are going to talk about this build. I am going to give some tips and tricks on how I printed it, things like doing the eyes, what I did for the mouth, and just positioning of it. A few more tidbits here and there on how I got it to look like this. So without any further ado, I'm going to show you some more shots of this, share you my profile, and then we'll go through those extra settings and some more goodies on this helmet, so check it out. All right, so digging into some of these settings on this Green Goblin helmet. So I used Air One Silk Emerald Green Filament. Of course, I did a temp tower, a retraction test, and my E-steps and my flow are all calibrated. So some very important things you want to do with your printer. But digging back into the filament there, the temp tower showed that it actually printed the best right at around 205, 206, which is where most of the other Air One Silk filaments like. But I did something a little bit different on this. So on this particular helmet, I actually printed this at a 0.2 layer height and I enabled ironing. Now, what I like to do with ironing is drop the temperature about 2 degrees. In my Silk Printing 101, I mentioned how you need to be careful with ironing, because what ironing is it's an additional path that goes over the filament to kind of smooth it out. Silk filaments, because they have those elastomers in them, they can be a little bit temperature temperate, I guess you could say. So if you have your temperature too high and it's doing an additional path over it and it's not extruding any filament, it could actually warp it a little bit, or it could give discoloration to the filament. So what I actually did is I dropped mine down about 2 degrees. So I actually printed this whole helmet at 203 and really didn't have any issues. So 0.2 layer height with ironing came out really nice. 50 millimeters per second on my speed. And again, rehashing what I said, because I said I was going to do that, my acceleration and my jerk were turned down. So my acceleration was turned down to about 275, and then my jerk was turned down to 9 millimeters per second. So the reason for the acceleration and the jerk being turned down is you have to think of your hot end as it's moving. You wouldn't want it to move super quick and then stop and then move and stop. That can create alterations. It could cause shifts in the print. When you lower that acceleration and jerk, it's very smoothly moving from area to area on the print. So that's why I turn that down, and it really does result in a more controlled print, a better print. And also I noticed, since I've been started doing it a while ago, my bed doesn't unlevel as much and you just get a lot smoother, better quality prints. So I definitely recommend turning down both the acceleration and jerk for a little bit finer quality prints. Continuing on with temperature, and something I also talked about, is I like to keep my bed plate around 56 to 58 degrees. I use glass beds. I like to use hairspray on them and brim. I stated in Silk Printing 101 that heat can radiate from the bed upward into the print. In those first, few layers, the first couple inches, you can actually see color variation, which we don't want. So adhesion is important, but you don't want too much temperature. Temperature is not always the best option for it. You can use a glue stick, you can use tape. Me personally, I love the glass bed and hairspray. It works the best. In addition to those tips and tricks, here's also my Cura profile. These are all the settings that I use to get Goblin looking the way he is. Many of these I already talked about: acceleration, jerk, infill, things like that. But what we're going to do in the next slide here is talk about advanced settings. So these are going to be settings that are really going to help fine-tune your silk print, make them cleaner, crisper, and also help eliminate and prevent some potential blemishes that may happen within your silk print when you're 3D printing. So now what I'm going to do is flip the camera around and show you a couple additional settings that I used that just help the print come out very clean, very crisp. A lot of times I see people mentioning about oozing or little blobs or imperfections in the prints, and these settings here are going to help you eliminate those. So I'm going to flip the camera around, show you where these settings are, kind of explain to you what they do and what they did for my model, and then I'm going to move on to some tips that I had on actually putting the Green Goblin model together. I'll talk about the eyes and the mouth and some of the other things. So let me show you these settings real quick, and we'll wind down and get to Goblin and show you some more of him. So the first setting I'm going to talk about is combing. And what combing really is, it's kind of a way of, I don't want to say smoothing out, but it's a way that it keeps the filament a little bit cleaner. It doesn't get beaten up as much because it limits the amounts of retractions. Instead of doing a retraction of filament and sucking that filament up into the hot end and moving the shortest distance, what it does is it goes back over the existing printed areas of the model, kind of comb the PLA. So instead of sucking that up and retracting it over and potentially getting, stringing or little blobs and things like that, it will just go back over the already printed path and kind of comb or smooth it out. So if any extra material is oozed out or anything like that, it will simply get worked into the model, leaving ultimately a cleaner, better finish. Now, it's very important to select what type of combing mode. From default in Cura here on the right, it comes off. So what off would do is when we have a layer change, it would just shoot the hot end over right here and then start printing right here. But with combing, like I said, it will go back over the entire area. So it will take longer. However, it is going to clean the model up as it does that. The two that I recommend the most, especially for silk printing, is going to be either not in skin or within infill. If you select all, it will literally go over the walls, everything, the infill, which we kind of want to avoid the walls or the skin. So that's why for this particular model, I selected not in skin. That way, when it goes back over the model, it's only going to go on these interior walls. So if anything were to ooze out or were there any blemishes, it's going to be on the inside where you're not going to see it. So that's something very important. It will kind of smooth and comb over the print. It will limit retraction so the filament won't get as beat up. It's also going to reduce the chance of a clog or heat creep or things like that. So these are all things that when you get into long prints, combing mode is really essential because it kind of smooths and combs the unit out. It doesn't beat up your filament, and it limits potential print fails like heat creep and nozzle clog. So not in skin or within infill are the two that I recommend. Now it does have a max comb distance. So this is basically as far as the nozzle will travel without doing a retraction. It's best just to set it at 0. That way it can travel the whole path without doing a retraction. Again, you're not beating up that filament. You're not leaving yourself open for additional oozing and things like that. And it's really going to help your print a ton. All right, so two other settings that I like to enable when I am doing a silk print is both avoiding supports when traveling and Z-hop when retracted. What these two will do, the first, avoid supports when traveling, that is just very simple. So we'll basically hop over the support. The last thing we want to do, especially on a model like this where there is an essential overhang, we can see right here where it's red. This really needs that support. So if our hot end is traveling and it hits that support and breaks it off, this could ultimately fail. Now, if you're sanding it or painting it, you can obviously fix that with, some body filler or putty or something like that. But with a silk print, if this piece fails and it gets distorted, I mean, all of your progress is pretty much shot. Z-hop when retracted, what that will do is when a retraction does occur, also lift that hot end. So what this can do is, again, if for some reason your retraction settings aren't calibrated properly, or maybe your temp tower isn't good, you have oozing, just something isn't up to par, Z-hop when retracted will give you a little bit of a fallback. So it will simply lift up, so that can prevent oozing and things like blobs. So if you've ever printed something and you have these little tiny blobs all in the print, Z-hop when retracted can often help mitigate that. That will also prevent any sort of dragging. If you've ever done silk printing, there's something that's called scaling, where it almost looks like there's scales on the silk print, and that can happen when you're retracting, if you don't have Z-hop enabled. And what happens is silk filament can be very temperamental to temperature. So if it is not Z-hopped over when it's retracting and it's kind of dragging on this surface here, it can create what looks like scale. So enabling Z-hop when retracted can ultimately help prevent little premature blobs or zits that may occur from improper retraction settings. It can also help prevent scaling within the surface of the silk print. The last setting that I am going to talk about here is called coasting. Now, I did not use coasting on this particular print just due to the fact that I was pretty confident in my retraction calibrations. This is a nice setting that you can kind of experiment with, seeing as how it's under experimental. If you are having issues with retraction, or again, you just want a fallback or a safeguard on your print. So what coasting does is it takes the final path of what the extruder is doing, and it uses the leftover material, any ooze material or anything like that, and it uses it to complete the layer. So again, what this will help do is if you're having issues with stringing, if you're having, premature oozing or zits or anything like that, this can help mitigate that. So I didn't need it for mine, but some people do struggle with getting certain silk filaments dialed in. This is a great option to do because, like I said, it's just using leftover material to help finish the extrusion. And again, it kind of smooths it out. You want to make sure you have enough top layers and bottom layers. So I recommend, if you enable coasting, doing a minimum of 4. On my print, I did top layers of 5, even though I wasn't using coasting, but it's always better to have more top layers to give you a little bit more definition and just overall thickness. If you're having issues with stringing, just some imperfections that you may not be able to get locked down, coasting is a great option to help smooth out and define those prints. So there's just some additional tips and tricks there for you guys, some of those settings. Hopefully those make sense for you. I know about a year and a half ago when I started doing silk prints, they didn't look anything like they do now. And some of these settings, some of these things that I went over, they really did change the whole way that my silk prints look. They really are coming out awesome. Like I said, I think Goblin looks pretty good. So hopefully those settings shed a little bit of light on how I got my model to look like that. Definitely go ahead and try them out. Drop me a comment, leave me some feedback, let me know how they worked. But that's pretty much it for my settings. What we'll do now is we'll transition over and give you some more tips and tricks on assembling Goblin. All right, so now that we got some of those additional settings that'll help you fine tune your print, let's talk a little bit more about Goblin. I got a lot of rave reviews about this, and it does look really cool. It's an awesome print. And that was my goal, was just to let the machine do all the work, to see if what I thought would work, and ultimately it did. My only quarrel with Air One is, so all of this bottom part here, I use 1 roll of filament, and I'm sure you can probably see in this light, the top dome is a little bit off in color. I'm kind of bummed. I'm gonna end up reprinting it. I did do some plane slicing to kind of change things up. So I'm gonna end up redoing this, and the reason why I actually sliced this was because there's these really sharp pieces on here, and I was afraid that, I'm printing this whole big dome on these sharp spikes that it may fail. So I ended up doing a plane slice here and just doing these on flat planes. Kind of glad this happened because then I can just reprint the dome and kind of change my support settings and see if I can print it as one. So that's really the only thing that I didn't like. I ordered 2 rolls because I knew it wasn't going to be enough. Even scaled at 95%, like, this thing is still pretty massive. Overall, it printed really good. I basically printed everything, standing straight up. When I do anything, like some people lean them forward and stuff like that. When you're doing a silk print, you want to eliminate the amount of supports that may touch the main fascia of it. So I basically just kind of printed everything very straight. You're going to use a little bit more in supports. Like I said, you can drop that support density just a little bit and you'll save a little bit on supports. But when you are doing a raw print like this, kind of throw out the window of time. The left and right ear, those took roughly about 17 hours each. The front face, that was definitely a slower print. That took around 36 hours. And a lot of that was due to the number of supports. Same thing with the top dome that was segmented. I did do a mild center support just because I didn't want to get into any warping or risk, the print failing right towards the end. That was around 40 hours. The bottom part that I cropped out of the top dome, that was 11 hours. And then the back piece of the head that kind of cascades down to the lower neck area, that was around 35, 36 hours. So overall, it was about 155 to 160 hours of print time. So definitely not a fast print by any means. However, when you put in that work, when you do those calibrations, get all those settings just right, do a nice, slow, controlled print, you can definitely get one heck of a print, which I think I got here. And again, some of those additional tips that I talked about, the filament dehydrators, getting proper adhesion, using hairspray and brim, I think is great. So just kind of reiterating some of the things that I use. But overall, about 160 hours, everything turned out great. And I think Goblin looks pretty good. So until the painted version, I'm going to stick with this guy for now. As far as the mouth goes, all I used was that tinted visor. I've used it in my Vader when I made the Vader eyes, and all I did was just made a cardboard template and I cut it, and then you can probably kind of see here, it's just hot glued in place there. That's all I did was cut it, made sure it was filling everything in, and it looks great. It makes the teeth really pop. It brings the green out a little bit more. The eyes. So a lot of people are asking about the eyes. People were struggling with the Green Goblin eyes. People were trying to print them in resin, and some guys were trying to do like vacuum molds and stuff. But what I ended up using for mine is actually a static cling window film, and I put it in my laminator. So if you guys have watched any of my other videos like I did with Mandalorian where I used the laminator, basically this is a lot, it's not like window tint, it's actually really thick. You could almost use just this by itself on the eyes if you glue them or adhere them in place properly. All I did with this is I took this, you can see the small section that I cut here to make the eyes. All I did was cut a piece of this off. I ran it through my laminator, and it left me with these nice pieces. And when you curve them, when they come out straight, there's like these wrinkles, but then as soon as you curve them, they go away. And you can see here that you can see right through them. Just made a cardboard template, and then I took my overlay and I put it on here, say on the back, traced it with a Sharpie, cut it, and then I actually just use 3M double-sided foam tape. You can also use the automotive molding tape, and around the brim of the eye, I just place it around the entire outline of the eye and just cut this just a little bit larger, stuck it on there, boom, good to go. You can also hot glue it. I was just a little bit worried that the hot glue takes a while to dry, so if you don't hold it on, it might lift a little bit. With this, you basically just stick it on. I hit it with a lighter. I pushed this on, held it on there for 5 seconds, and it was good to go. So I like the automotive tape. You know, it held it in place really good. It really does look awesome. This is a display piece. Durability-wise, I mean, I can't really say how long it would or wouldn't hold up. That's why I kind of mentioned that automotive tape. It worked really good. The teeth, for the most part, I just used a little bit of E6000, popped them right in place. They were dry in a few minutes. Everything else, putting this together, you can see where the segments were here. This was the Do 3D file. I just hot glued it in place. This back piece here, if you are gonna wear this for a display piece, this will have to come off. There's absolutely no way you're gonna fit this on your head with that piece in. So this would have to come off. You'd have to come up with some kind of hinge or magnetic piece. This for me is just a display piece, so I'm not really worried about wearing it. When I do my painted version, I am gonna scale it a little bit larger, and then I will actually come up with some sort of magnetic piece to kind of slide this in place and hold it on. But overall, guys, all of the settings I went over, everything that I did, you know, left me with a piece like this. The gaps here kind of annoy me. I like it to be one solid piece. So I did recently get a CR6 Max, and I still have to set up my CR10 Max. So I may, if I can get those set up, I may just reprint this on a bigger printer. But that is a big tip. You do need a bigger printer. Most of this was printed on my Ender 5 Plus. If you're gonna wear this piece, it's not gonna work on a CR10, V2, V3, anything like that. You are going to need a big printer. So that is another big tip. But overall, I think Goblin looks pretty cool. He is a great display piece. I'm not done with him. I'm gonna do some cool things. I'm gonna add some lights. I'm gonna add some sounds, so you will definitely wanna stick around for that. But hopefully these settings in this video gave you some cool tips, some cool tricks, and kind of get you on the guide to getting Goblin looking something like this. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. That is silk printing 102 or 101.2, I don't know, something like that. But hopefully all those settings helped. Hopefully you guys like Green Goblin. Again, if you guys have any questions on anything I went over, just leave me a comment if you have a question. I'll be more than happy to answer it. If you haven't seen the last of this, I am gonna revisit this, so there will be more videos on this in the future, because I'm super happy to have this on my wall, and I didn't pick up one spray can. Can't beat that, can't beat that at all. If you like Goblin, give me a thumbs up. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you are a subscriber to the channel, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I have a string of videos that are lined up. Didn't forget about the giveaways. I've got more giveaways coming. It's just with the holidays and everything, I was super busy. So don't worry, guys, they're coming. It's just finding that balance. So we'll get these videos, they are coming. Don't you worry. If you're not a subscriber and you like Green Goblin or Spider-Man or Marvel, 3D printing, cosplay, Disney, all the stuff that we do here, go ahead and click that subscribe button. A lot of fun videos, a lot of shorter videos that are coming in 2022 that are gonna help you achieve all of your goals in 2022. So definitely click that subscribe button and come back for some fun. That's it for now, guys. Thank you to each and every one of you. Again, if you guys have any questions, you're not sure of anything, drop me a comment. If you wanna hit me up on Discord, email, anything like that, DW's got your back. That's it, guys. I'm out of here. I gotta go put Gobby back on the wall. Gotta go working on some more projects. So for now, Goblin out, DW out. Later.